We are on chapter 7 today. Here we go. I don't rightly remember the pup changing into a dog. I do remember that just about the time school ended, he came up to about my knees. He was still kind of scraggly looking, and he still spent most of his time wagging that fuzzy tail, so I kept telling myself he was only a pup. Only inside, I guess I knew better. Reckon Mom and Dad knew about the pup all along. Dad didn't come up to the barn much because it was summer and there was no need to fetch hay to the cows. But a couple of times when Beauty and the pup and I would go riding, we'd see him in a truck or on the trailer. We kept our distance. But Dad would have to be blind not to see him. He never mentioned dogs or being afraid after that night we had the big fight. Not one word was said, and he did seem easier to get along with. Mama always fixed a little extra food, especially meatloaf. She managed to leave the table long enough for me to tuck some scraps away in my pocket, yet never seemed to notice when food was missing. And every day she waited till I was inside the barn before she'd call the cats to come eat. Somehow that dumb old pup got the notion that whenever Mama called, "Here, kitty, kitty, kitty," that it meant it was supper time. It didn't matter though, because each time she clanged the cat's pan together and called them, I was feeding the pup. Then one day it happened. I was either early feeding him or Mama was late feeding the cats. Either way, when she clanged the pans together and called, "Here, kitty, kitty," his saggy ears perked up and his tail went a-wagging. Before I could yell, he lit out for the door and made a flying tackle for him. All I got for my trouble was a mouthful of dusty hay and the air knocked out of me. I came up spitting and coughing and gagging for air. Then I scrambled to my feet, still hoping I could catch the pup before Mama saw him. It was easy to tell what was happening long before I got to the house. There was squealing and spitting and yapping, more noise than you'd ever heard. The commotion was coming from beside the back door, and right off I could tell that pesky pup was mixing with the cats. Mama was yelling, and just as I got to the gate, Dad came running out to help her. He had the broom in his hand, raised high for hitting, but when he saw what was happening, he put the broom down, leaned back against the wall, and went to laughing. I imagine that would be a pretty funny sight, seeing those cats and that dog together. When I saw what was happening, I couldn't help laughing either. As the pups started after the food, the cats must have remembered him. They figured he was still too little and cowardly to give them any trouble. So when he came running up, they went after him. The pup had changed considerable from the way he had been before. You got to remember, after all this time's passed, he's been eating all them yummy dinners Ricky has brought him. He's beefed up a little. He's gotten bigger, right? He's not as weak as he used to be. I was just opening the gate when the first of our 6 cats whizzed under my legs. She was all fuzzed up, scared, and running like the devil himself had a hold of her tail. The other 5 were still wrapped up with the pup. There was hair flying and squalling till I could hardly hear myself think. Mostly the cats were the ones making the noise. Little wonder either. All of a sudden, I saw the pup chomp down on one of the cats. Uh-oh. He grabbed her by the back and pitched her straight into the air. That crazy cat must have flown a good 6 feet straight up. She was spinning and squealing, legs and tail doing kind of a flip-flop, trying to get her balance. She lit with a thud that looked for a second like it broke her in pieces. Then, the next second, she was on her feet running like mad for a nearby locust tree. Another of the cats was giving the fight to the pup. She came whizzing past so close it nearly knocked me down. Right behind her came another running, scared, with its tail puffed up big around as it was long. Just the calico and the tomcat were left. The pup shook the tom real hard, and he threw a fight. Took out running like the others. Only he was right scared and mixed up after being shook. He must have lost his bearings for a minute. He aimed straight for the house. Mama saw him coming, but she was too slow to do anything about it. The cat was so confused he must have thought Mama was a tree, and a tree is a natural place for him when a dog was chasing him. First thing you know, he shot under Mama's dress and started climbing. Uh-oh. Mama went to screaming and jumping up and down like frog legs frying in a pan. She kept up her squealing and jumping long after the cat had left her and taken out through the wheat field. It must have scared the cat more than it did Mama. What with the dog and Mama both ganging up on him like they did, we never did see that cat again. The calico was hanging fast to the pup's head. She was all balled up on his back, digging in with her claws and chomping a mouthful of ear. The pup was about ready to give up. He was shaking his head and running in a whole circle that brought him almost to the fence, then back again toward the house. Before I could even think about helping him out, the pup took care of things himself. Right about to the back door, he stopped, ducked his head real low, then reared up on his back feet and like a bucking bronco and gave a mighty shake of his head. Sure enough, it threw the cat loose. And as the cat was falling, the pup grabbed her by the tail, shook it a good one, then flung her across the yard. As if that wasn't enough for the poor cat, she had to go and land on the cellar door. It was a heavy door made out of wood and covered on the outside with sheet metal. Like most cats, this one lit on her feet. But she was still fighting mad and had her claws out. When those claws hit that slick sheet metal, there wasn't anything for her to do but slide. She started sliding backward, and when she started sliding, she started running, trying to get away from the pup. Only the more she ran, the more she slid. So imagine one of those metal buildings and a cat trying to run up it. There's nothing for them to grip their claws on, so the cat's just sliding or maybe even just running in place there. I bet that was a pretty funny sight to see. She ran and slid and fell and ran some more and slid some more till I figured it was plumb gonna run herself to death before she got off that slick door. Finally, she fell and slid off the door. When her feet hit solid ground, she tore out for the barn. Ran so hard she didn't even notice when she left a big chunk of her hair on the fence where she tried to squeeze under. The pup chased her, but only a little way. Then he came back, took one bite of the food, and changed completely. He'd been all business. The hair on his back was bristled up, ready to fight. His lips were bared back, showing white teeth, and there was a vicious glare in his eyes. After one bite of the cat's food, his hair went down across the ridge of his back, his tail started wagging, and his long pink tongue came rolling out of his mouth. After a second or so, he spotted me over by the gate. Then here he came. He was kind of grinning. He was kind of grinning out of one side of his face, squirming and wiggling until I thought he was going to fall down. He stopped at my feet, barked a couple times, like he expected me to praise and make him over for the great battle he had just won. I did. After I'd petted him and left him up good, he trotted back to the food. Not to eat, just to stand guard over it and make sure those pesky cats didn't come back. It was about then when I noticed Mama and Dad. Dad had been leaning up against the wall, chuckling. When I saw him now, he was sitting against the wall, right where he had slid down. He was holding his stomach and laughing so hard that tears came to his eyes. He had pointed to the cellar door where the cat had done so much sliding. Then he pointed back at Mama, who was still dancing around, looking about despairingly to make sure there weren't any more cats to come clawing up her leg. Mama got downright upset when she saw Dad sitting there laughing at her. She walked over and kicked him on the foot, shook her finger in his face, and jumped all over him about not helping her. Dad tried to keep a straight face while Mama was blessing him out, but he just couldn't. Mama'd shake her finger at him. Dad would look real serious, frown, and nod his head like he was really listening. Then his cheeks would puff out and his lips would get to quivering till he couldn't hold it in any longer. He'd bust he'd bust with a big puff of air and go to laughing. Mama finally got disgusted with him and stormed off for the house. Dad straightened up then. He came over to where I was standing by the gate. The laughing and chuckling left him when he put his hands on my shoulders. He looked at me, then at the pup, then back at me again. His mouth opened, but the words never came out. They didn't need to. I knew what he was going to say from his eyes, from the way he stood so tall and straight. My dad was proud of me. Why was Dad proud of him? I want you guys to think about why Dad was proud of him for just a second. He was proud of him because he was no longer afraid of dogs, and that's what Dad really wanted him to do, was to overcome that fear of dogs. And now he has with this puppy that is on their farm. So that's pretty cool. I really like that chapter. Pretty funny. Okay, guys, I'll see you tomorrow for chapter 8. Bye.